I got this table from a friend who didn't want it anymore. It's in pretty rough condition. The trim is broken, the drawers need mending, and the back leg is broken, and you'll see in a moment. It'll be visible in this picture right here. See that leg that's broken in half? So I'm going to do some mending on that. The hardware is in good condition, so I'm just going to refinish it and put it back on. The fixes on the drawer were really simple. Just a little bit of wood glue and some clamps, and I actually filled in a few holes with some wood putty. I love the color of the wood. Can you see the tiny dovetail joints at the back of that drawer? It's really neat. I scuff sanded it, and I tried to mend that trim on the top of the table, but it was so cracked it was impossible to fix. So I ended up chipping off all of that trim, and I'm going to replace it with something that's a lot better. Now you can see that I've removed the trim and got the finish off of the top for the most part. I mended the veneer a bit. I'm not sure why, but sometimes when we see a piece of furniture, we just get these ideas. Here you can see that I've used the quick wood to mend that leg, and it hardens up nicely. Right now I'm using a chisel to shape it down, and later on I'll use an orbital sander and hand sanding off camera. Now that putty is going to get even a little bit more hard because right now it's in a hard clay, and it's still soft enough to mold with a chisel. I'm trying to get that very, very smooth so that you'll never know once it's painted that it had been broken in half. Note that off camera I did sand down that open wound, if you will, so that the wood putty would adhere to the break. So here's the new trim that I'm going to put on. This is Wood You Bend, and they make appliques and trims and all sorts of details for wooden furniture and crafts. It comes in a hard roll, and I'm going to use a blow dryer. You can use a heat gun as well. It doesn't take long before it gets soft enough to manipulate. And the trick with using this Wood You Bend is not to manipulate it too soon. Let it get nice and soft and warm, and then you'll be fine. And I'm going to add that trim back where it was originally, only a little closer to the outside of the table. So there will actually be just a little bit more surface on the tabletop. And I think if it matches the edge, it's going to be more aesthetically pleasing. Here is where you have to have some patience when you're about to mold this. I need to turn the mold, the trim, at a 90-degree angle so that it follows the edge of the table. And I can't bend it too soon when it's cold and hard because it will just snap off. So I actually heat it and bend it just a few times, I think actually 3 times, before it's exactly where I want it, and then I'll throw a piece of tape on it so that it cools in that position. It's somewhat time consuming, but it's very easy to do. You're actually going to need to tape it twice. The first time you tape it is when it's shaped into position. And then after it cools, you can pick it up and put your glue on and replace it and then retape it. The appliques that they sell work the same way. So if you had an applique that you wanted to go on a rounded piece of your furniture, say the top of your drawer was um, a shaped drawer, you could soften it with a heat gun and mold it right to the furniture and let it dry in that position. Really great stuff. Here I'm going to need it to be nice and heated again so that I can cut it off at the angle of the table, which is a curve. So I want to follow that curve, and I don't want it to snap off where I don't want it, so I'm going to make sure it's nice and warm before I cut it with a box cutter. If you feel that it needs some sanding afterwards, you can wait until it's cool and hard. And I would wait until it was glued on, of course, and nice and secure. And then you can do a little sanding on it, and it's not going to hurt it at all. Off camera, I added 2 coats of Dixie Belle Boss primer in gray. This is what you see here, and look how pretty that trim is. I think that's a lot better. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of sanding of the patches that I put on here, just to make sure that it will take the paint okay. So here I have a few colors that I was going to blend onto this table, but I actually didn't. It blended well because Dixie Belle chalk paints always blend well, but I just didn't like the way that it looked. It made the legs look a little too spindly, so I opted to keep it all the light blue, which is actually called Dusty Blue, and it's Dixie Belle chalk paint. And I did do some blending on just the drawer fronts, which in drop cloth, which is in off-white. And the rest of the table is also painted in drop cloth because that's where the decoupage is going to be placed. So I want a nice bright surface for the decoupage. It's going to look funny for a while because the table is painted in bits and pieces. Here's where I'm doing a little bit of a blend on these drawers because these drawers are going to have a transfer, and I want to highlight the transfer. You can see that the dovetail joints in the front are painted because they were just so neat, larger than the ones in the back of the table. Now here is Decoupage Gel by Redesign with Prima. I got the matte finish, and this is a decoupage gel that goes below and over your decoupage paper. I had to cut this decoupage paper into 3 parts because I wanted one for the top and one each for the sides, and it's one complete picture when you look at it. It's called Skull Chinoiserie, and the decoupage is also Redesigned with Prima. It has some fantastic colors in it. So here you can see that the tabletop isn't painted in color yet. It just has the base coat of the drop cloth. But after the decoupages are adhered, I'm going to paint the rest of the table to match that decoupage transfer. And I'm going to really have some fun with glass bead gel as well. I'm going to do some stenciling on the front in the front of the top of the table, I mean, with the glass bead gel. It's so pretty. This table ended up looking like a pair of jeans when I was finished. It just sort of reminded me of a pair of jeans, so I'm calling it Denim Dreams. This is the first time I've ever used that paste, and it works great. It works just like wallpaper, and I'm handling it as if it was wallpaper. Here's one of the sides. Now I have to cut that transfer a bit more so that it matches the top and it fits into this side panel. You can see underneath the table I painted the blue chalk paint, and there's a little rectangular tag down there, and that's the original furniture maker's tag. It's Ferguson Furniture, and I believe when I researched it was a company out of New York. I want to say it was the early 1900s, probably, just based on the furniture maker's business. And so I like to leave a tag if I find it, because that way the table has a complete story. I don't want to erase the furniture's history. I'm basically adding on to the history. So I'll actually add my tag to it as well, and I'll put it in an inconspicuous place. Here I'm just doing some hand painting and doing a design that echoes the decoupage on the top with a setting sun in a golden field of grass. And this paint is Dixie Belle Muscadine wine and Flamingo of the sun, and then the golden grass is Colonel Mustard and drop cloth. The chalk paint, the blue chalk paint, is dry, and so is the gold paint, because I'm going to do a little bit of blending on this setting sun, and it would make a real mess if the other paints were still wet. And over this I'm going to do more decorating with stencils, and so the sky will have a stencil. I forget the name of the stencil, but it's by Fineably. It's a floral stencil, and it's supposed to mimic what the sky would look like at night or at sunset. And then there will be some grass and flower stencils in the foreground in the golden grass. I'm just taking off any nits so that my stenciling will be adhered well. You can see that I haven't painted the top of the table yet. I use a little adhesive spray so that it doesn't make a mess. This paint is a blue metallic paint by Alchemy, and the paints of the grass will also be Alchemy paints too. They are acrylics actually, and it's a pearl metallic and green metallic. So the green metallic goes over the pearl, because you would be able to see some of the green grass at that time of night if this was really a sunset. This is the other transfer, or this is the transfer, but the other transfer is also named Chinoiserie, just like the decoupage. And I love this transfer. I've used it before. I love the color and I love the way it handles. It does have some fine details that are tricky to get on, but it's very forgiving and not so fragile. So here you'll see that I have to make several cuts in it, and I actually drop a piece, but that's okay because I pick it up and replace it, and it adheres great to the front of the table. I burnish it with my fingers, and then later on I'll burnish it with the soft cloth to make sure all the edges are down, and then I clear coat over this to make sure none of those edges will ever peel up. I think the bird is my favorite part of this transfer, and it has 3 pages to it. You can see how many cuts I have to do on the transfer, but it handles really well. And there it is all completed. There's the back all completed. Now you can see that the top is painted to match the decoupage artwork, and the front of the table on the top is done in a blue glass bead gel that I got off camera. This is Howard's citrus shield, and I like to use that all over actually. So everything has been clear coated except for the insides of the drawers. And I like to do the drawer slides too. I'll actually do them on the inside. I don't know if you can see it, but I have stenciled the sides of the drawers on the outside. Now it's been clear coated, but I'm going to go over it with some clear wax because I'm going to add some decorative waxes to it. So I want to give it a good base coat of wax, and that way I can move my wax around. It's been clear coated and sanded. I will also be putting gold gilding wax on top of that trim. And I'll do some shading with black wax around that artwork. I'll come back over it in a little bit and buff it out. Can't tell that that leg was broken. So here's the original table. And here's the finished product. You can see the glass bead gel and the hardware all polished up. And you can probably see some of the gold gilding wax. Tell me what you think about this transformation. Thank you for watching the video. Leave a comment or ask a question. We love to hear from you.